On this episode of Cape Media News, Yarmouth selectmen voice concerns over a proposed cable landing site, the Cape Cod Rail Trail expansion moving forward, and we talk to Cape Codders getting ready for the Super Bowl. These stories and more, this is Cape Media News. This is Cape Media News, your local authentic newscast for Cape Cod. It's February 2018, and we are so pleased to be on the air bringing you the stories that matter to Cape Cod. Tonight, we'll learn about the Cape Cod Rail Trail extension into Yarmouth and beyond. We'll hear from Yarmouth Selectman Mark Forrest about the proposed Vineyard Wind project, and we'll talk with Cape Codders preparing for the Super Bowl. Plus, we've got some amazing local pictures of Monday's super blue moon. In local news, the Cannabis Control Commission will be traveling around the state of Massachusetts on their last public listening tour before they finalize regulations for the adult use cannabis industry. Topics of interest include licensing, operational requirements for cultivation, product manufacturing, retail sales, and social consumption. Delivery, compliance, enforcement, and administrative appeals also being considered. Public feedback is necessary in order to include some key provisions to the regulations. We're talking brick and mortar delivery license, 1-day and 3-day cannabis event licenses, allow for bringing your own cannabis to certain locations, and to allow for smoking in designated public consumption areas. The good news, the Cannabis Control Commission will be in Hyannis on Tuesday, February 6th for a public hearing from 9 a.m. to noon inside the hearing room on the second floor of Barnstable Town Hall. Former Cape and Island State Senator Dan Wolf says he won't challenge Charlie Baker for governor in 2018. Wolf tells the Cape Cod Times the time isn't right, and instead he's going to remain focused on his business, Cape Air. Up next, we get an update on the Cape Cod Rail Trail expansion project.
Bye, Janet. It's nice seeing you again. You look good, girl. Just let me know what I can do to help.
Well, to help me, she'd have to help every day. Every hour, every ouch, every time my wife calls for help. I mean, maybe she could help me make her lunch. But the crust, all the crust has to be cut off the corners. She could help me run to the doctor for the 5th time this week. Help me with the specialist and the second opinions and the painful paperwork of our paperwork. Help me deal with how hard it is seeing my wife's name on so much paperwork. But this is on me. I'm the only one who can do this, like this, for her. Besides...
Take care.
We will. Janet doesn't like her cooking anyway.
Find support for your strength. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community.
Imagine riding your bike from one end of Cape Cod to the other on a safe, protected bike path. Well, that sounds like a really good idea to me, and it's one that is well on the way to becoming a reality. We caught up with Cape Cod Commission Technical Services Director Glenn Cannon for an update on the current phase of the project. He says there was a slight delay in installing the Bass River Bike Bridge.
It got caught up in permitting. You know, we've been fully supportive of it. They wanted to widen out that bridge a little bit more, but that involved the Army Corps of Engineers and permitting. That's a little bit delayed. It's going to be done this year. So this year, I believe in 2018, we'll be able to bike all the way from Yarmouth, all the way out to Wellfleet.
The town of Barnstable is working on a plan to enhance cycling infrastructure along Independence Drive.
You know, we also know that the town of Barnstable has a MassWorks grant to connect this bike path to downtown Hyannis. It's a lot closer to where the people live. You know, it's one thing we're all excited about the bike path, and we're standing in the parking lot now, but we're really excited for the day when you don't put your bike on your car and drive it to the bike path. You get on your bike at your house, you ride on a bike path separate from vehicles, you know, virtually anywhere you want to go on Cape Cod.
Part of the plan involves expanding the bike trail from Wellfleet all the way to Provincetown.
We've already had discussions about it. It's 22 miles. They're giving us like these $7 million chunks, and a bike path costs about $1 million a mile. They told me to break it down into a chunk for like $6 or $7 million. So we're looking at phase 1, going north from Wellfleet as far as we can into Truro. You know, it'll be a few years, but again, I think they're fully committed to it.
But as Cannon says, transportation construction isn't cheap.
You know, the cost of just going through the roofs here with everything. I always try to tell people all the time, our traffic signals start at $2.5 million, and they go up from there. It's incredible how expensive all these things are becoming, and it's really the only holdup right now. Again, Massachusetts Department of Transportation is fully on board. The Department of Health is really wanting to push them along to move all these things forward.
And of course, community engagement is a key part of moving bicycling projects forward.
I do want to say, for the residents of Cape Cod, I want them to continue with the advocacy. Again, I met with the staff member of Governor Baker. He had a presentation up at the State House. The end of that presentation was our meeting over in Dennis, where we had 300 residents all out to support the bike path. That's very important for them to see it. It's very important for the governor to see it. Again, Governor Baker is on board, but we need to continue that support.
Cannon says the bike trail span heading into Yarmouth will be open by spring 2018. Lights, camera, action. Barnstable County Sheriff's inmates work to clean out the theater at the Chatham Drama Guild. Here, Sheriff's inmate Jason Gully tosses one of many barrels of dump-worthy material, much of it old props, into a dumpster outside the Chatham Drama Guild headquarters and theater on Kroll Road. Gully was part of a 4-man inmate crew, supervised as always by a deputy sheriff. Here we see inmate Adrienne Pelletier hauling out an old door. Part 2 of the job includes removing the theater's stage and building a new one. Using sheriff's inmates, by the way, saves the nonprofit more than $3,500 in labor costs. The Mercy Otis Warren Cape Cod Woman of the Year Committee is seeking nominations for the Cape Cod woman who has made significant contributions in the arts, business, education, community involvement, or volunteerism. Nomination forms can be obtained now online at the Barnstable County website and within the next few weeks at Cape Cod area libraries and town halls. The nomination must be no more than 1 page in length. It should endeavor to include as much information about the nominee as possible. Nominations due Patriots Day, April 16th. Up next, Yarmouth Selectman Mark Forrest talks to us about the Vineyard Wind project.
When it's time for me to replace items that I use every day that contain mercury, I try to remember some very important things. Throwing out items that contain mercury is harmful to the environment. Actually, it's simple and easy to collect and recycle them safely. I can go online and visit mass.gov/DEP to find out a proper mercury disposal location nearest me. Such a small amount of effort really can make a huge difference. Keep mercury contained and out of our environment. Visit mass.gov/DEP for more information.
Well, last week we reported that energy company Vineyard Wind is hoping to build an 800-megawatt wind farm about 34 miles south of the Cape. They've got their eyes on Yarmouth's Englewood Beach as a place to land transmission cables. Yarmouth selectmen have raised concerns about the site, and the plan has opened up a conversation about the health of Lewis Bay. I sat down with Yarmouth selectman Mark Forrest, who shared some perspective from the board. So talk to me a little bit, Mark, about what you know about the Vineyard Wind project.
Well, the project itself essentially involves utilizing leased areas south of the vineyard to really provide a substantial amount of wind power to area residents. And the cable connection in Yarmouth has been sort of the biggest source of conservation. Many folks in Yarmouth, particularly in West Yarmouth and in Lewis Bay, know a lot about the cable, and really we haven't as a town sort of focused on the wind farm itself. I think if there's one encouraging thing about the project, aside from the cable, is the fact that we've identified areas outside of Nantucket Sound where offshore wind energy development is feasible. For many people familiar with the Cape Wind controversy, an important point during that debate was whether or not you could even do offshore wind energy out in that area. So I think for the critics of Cape Wind, for the people that oppose that project, many in Yarmouth and Barnstable and around the region, I think the point that they were making all along is that there are other better sites where there's more wind and it's more compatible with the area. I think that argument has sort of won out. The real challenge here is, can you actually put a cable through the sound, given some of the sensitivity of the ecological resources, can you actually safely and without much of an impact actually land a cable to get the power that's being generated into the system.
Just about the cable landing and about the selectmen's concerns, and I know again at that meeting that was held a couple of weeks ago, you guys did vote to send a letter to Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Matthew Beaton. Can you talk to me about what you're hoping to accomplish with that letter?
Well, first of all, the state of Massachusetts, it's important to understand that no permits at the state level can be issued for a project like this. I think there's somewhere between 50 and 20 permits that need to be issued. And under state law, you can't issue permits if a project like this sort of exceed certain thresholds. So the Vineyard Wind proponents have applied for a MEPA determination, the Mass Environmental Policy Act. And that office is reviewing their proposal and identifying all the remaining questions that have to be answered. And so they've heard from residents. Folks from West Yarmouth and in Barnstable have been sending in comments to them. State agencies are sending comments. And so relatively shortly, they'll have a pretty good picture. I think the deadline was just the other day, January 30th, for comments. So very shortly, we will have from the Environmental Affairs Office, in that section of it called the MEPA unit or the MEPA office, we will have from them a scope of work outlining all the studies and all the investigative work that they think needs to be done before any permits can be issued at the state level. And so the letter that the selectmen sent included principally the comments of our departments and some of our citizens in the Lewis Bay area, particularly our Natural Resources Department, our Conservation Department. Many of them have heard more directly from the residents, although they do come to our selectmen's meetings on a regular basis. But we got our department heads together and asked them to compile a letter that addressed all the issues that had been presented to the board. And they did that, and we signed off on that letter the other day and sent that in.
Great. And in terms of, impact to the residents, so when we're talking about the health of the Bay, we're also talking about residents in the Englewood neighborhood along New Hampshire Avenue. What have you been hearing from the residents of that area, if anything, at this point?
Well, I think one of the things that we've learned from the Cape Wind exercise is that people need to be vigilant in fighting for the things they really care about. Up until the recent years, so much effort has been spent by state, federal, and local authorities to conserve our coastal resources, to protect our coastal resources. And when the Cape Wind project was advanced, I think we were sort of disappointed that there wasn't enough of an effort made to make sure that those resources were adequately protected. And I think many people are sort of very frustrated and disappointed by the actions of federal agencies and state agencies. So there's a great deal of skepticism about promises and assurances not to worry about this or not to worry about that. So I think this is a project where there'll be vigilance throughout the process. And the interests and concerns extend throughout the Bay. It isn't necessarily with just the landfall. It's winding a cable through Lewis Bay. Some of the areas that are being proposed for it to be placed, it may not be deep enough. It may preclude in some way other actions. Maybe the cable is in an area that ought to be dredged. Maybe it's an area that's more suitable for aquaculture. The town of Yarmouth, I hope in the future, will be able to do more aquaculture in Lewis Bay as a way to help remediate pollution in that area. Will this project hurt those efforts, or how will they affect those efforts? I believe in the future we're going to have to do a lot more dredging, so the question is going to be how would that affect some of the dredging that's going to need to be done. So we've got to sort this all out, and the reality is that you shouldn't really be doing any major big decisions until you know what you're doing. You know what the impact is. You know how the ecosystem works. So that really needs to be done first, and that's a prerequisite. And that's, quite frankly, something that wasn't done on the Cape Wind project. There was just some very initial work that was done, and people were making very broad conclusions about impacts with very little information. I can recall meetings with the Fish and Wildlife Service and their biologists on bird impacts and seabird impacts, because there are millions of birds that flow through the area. And it was a very odd conversation with them and the proponents of Cape Wind. The bird biologists were saying there are millions of birds that go through there, and the proponents are saying, well, we don't have much data on that. So we had this sort of circular conversation. Until they did the analysis, until they did the studies, we won't know what those impacts are. So it was a constant fight to get the data and information together. And sure enough, again, the critics were proven right, that indeed the bird impacts would be potentially problematic, and we needed to be focused on mitigation. So I think the history of Cape Wind is one that provided lots of lessons that I know the folks in Lewis Bay are not going to forget.
So essentially, don't put the cart before the horse. Don't think about putting the cable in until you've thought about the overall health of the Bay.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly, you got it.
Well, Mark, I thank you so much for joining me today, and I know we'll talk with you more as this issue continues, and of course on many other issues here on the Cape.
All right, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Mark Forrest is a selectman with the town of Yarmouth. For Cape Media News Conversations, I'm Sarah Colvin. The Y Achievers had a visit from Cape and Island State Senator Julian Seer this week. We take a look at his talk to the up-and-coming Y Achievers. Cape and Island State Senator Julian Seer paid a visit to the Y Teen Achievers this week in Hyannis, speaking to the group about the world of work and answering questions from the crowd.
I'm Julian Seer, and I happen to be the state senator for the Cape and Islands district. This is the district that stretches from Mashpee all the way up to Provincetown, and also includes Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And so, I just was thrilled when Lieutenant Chalice invited me here to this meeting and to this group, and really just kind of want to have more of a conversation. I'm glad to talk a little bit about kind of how I got involved in politics, and then would really love to open it up and take your questions. It's kind of, I get to, I've only been in the job for now a year and a month, but I get to do a lot of talking at people, and it's actually I'm actually a lot more interested in what you all have to say as young people who are growing up here on the Cape. What are some of the issues, challenges that you see in our community? What do you think are things that are going well?
One achiever asked the senator about the opioid crisis.
You're going to see like a big conversation in the state. The governor's filed an opioid 2.0 bill to really look at how do you really continue what we're doing. I think you're going to have some real conversation on it, and I think that the state's going to study the issue and look at it. There's another thing we're looking at is expanding what paramedics can do, and right now basically someone overdoses, sort of the only option really is to bring them to the emergency room. They go to the emergency room, they're held for a certain period, they often can't get a bed, can't get into treatment, and are often released. Then they end up, that cycle often ends up continuing, and so we're trying to look at how do you connect people to care and provide a continuum of care for people who are struggling with addiction. But this is a really pernicious, tough disease. I think we've made some progress that we understand it as a disease, but yeah, it's definitely something we're going to be debating.
And why adult achiever and board member David Troutman asked the senator to describe a day in the life of a state senator.
Yep. Yep. So I think, actually, you know what this job is like? How many of you ever worked in a restaurant or do food service, right? We're Cape Codders, so we do this. This job is actually like working in a restaurant because you're constantly, the current job I have now, you're having to juggle many, many things, right? You've got multiple tables that you're waiting on. You have to remember all these different pieces. Different customers want different things, different constituents and constituencies, want me to focus on environmental issues or really care about housing. Some folks, want to push really kind of out of the box progressive policies, and other constituencies are more, are a little more conservative and cautious. So it very much feels like you're waiting on tables.
The Y Teen Achievers is a program that connects youth and families with resources they need to help prepare for life after high school and beyond. Senator Seer spoke with the group Monday evening at the Hyannis Youth and Community Center. The big day is on the way. Super Bowl Sunday is this weekend. This Sunday, the New England Patriots will vie for yet another Super Bowl win. It's a rematch. They face the Philadelphia Eagles. Will you be watching? Gabby Rossin reports.
Are you excited to see the Pats in another Super Bowl?
It's fun. It's been a lot of fun watching the whole almost 20-year stretch.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky with the Pats. I mean, we have a few, nail biters, but it's always been so exciting and fun to watch them.
Oh yeah, they're always a good game, definitely. Always within 3 points or so, it's going to be there right to the very end.
What do you think the final score will be?
Oh, God. 28-24.
I don't know. I'm not good at predicting scores. I bet it will be close.
I think it's going to be a wash. I think the Eagles are going to be really trying, and the Pats have some injuries, but let's say 28-21.
With us winning.
With us winning, absolutely.
Of course.
It's going to be kind of low scoring, but close. 21-17, something like that.
Final score, 24-10.
Are you betting money on that? Because
No.
you sound pretty confident. Do you think Tom Brady's going to retire next year?
No.
Why not?
As long as he stays orthopedically healthy, he won't retire. He's just too much into it, and he's a great example of health for everybody.
I mean, I know he probably would like to retire on top, and I heard some talk about Giselle kind of encouraging him to that, but he's just still an excellent player. So if he can, and he takes good care of himself, I think he's probably going to play a little bit more if he can.
I just think he's still good. He's still playing well enough, and I don't know what else he would do, you know. At this point, he's probably not ready to channel into another career, so I think he'll go a couple more years.
I don't think he's ready. I think his heart is still in this game, and I think he's still got some years ahead of him.
Go Pats!
The MSPCA Cape Cod has dozens of adoptable animals looking for a forever home. Today we meet 2 cats, a bunny, and a dog, all in need of love. This is Wicket. She's up for adoption here at the MSPCA Cape Cod on Route 28 in Centerville, across from the Bell Tower Mall. 4 months old, super fluffy and cuddly. If I could take her home myself, I would.
So this is Wicket, and we call her Wiki. That's her nickname. She is a 4-month-old lion head, and she came in with a cat, and they were actually really good friends. So she could possibly go home with a cat if it's the right match. She's not spayed yet, but she will be when she's 6 months old. She is incredibly sweet. She is litter box trained. A lot of people don't know that you can litter box train your rabbits. And she's just a sweetheart, and she's fluffy and sweet, and we just want to make sure that wherever she goes, she's got lots of out-of-cage enrichment so that she's not confined 24 hours a day. She really is very social and wants to be around people. So KJ and Lightning are 2 13-year-old cats that need to go to home together. They've lived together their whole lives, and they came to us due to very sad circumstances when their owner could no longer afford their medical care. So we do want them to go home together. They're a family. They need to stay together. So they're incredibly sweet. They've lived with other cats, dogs, children, so they would do well in almost any home. They're a little bit on the large side, and we want to get them to a healthy weight, and so we make sure that they have lots of enrichment and portion control. Okay, so Sammy is 8 years old. She's been with us for a few months or so. She came to us when her owner could no longer keep her, and she actually came with a very large tumor on her left back leg, and we had that removed, and soon thereafter discovered that she had luxating patella, sort of floating kneecap, and ACL problems. So she just recently had the surgery to address both of those issues, and she just needs a home where she's going to get lots of quiet time, at least for 2 months, and then hopefully after that she can romp around and have fun. She loves other dogs. She also loves to chase cats, so probably not a great dog for a home with cats or any other small animals. And even though she needs to be kept quiet for 2 months in terms of her leg, she does need to spend a lot of time with people and get a lot of love and socialization. And once she heals, she's going to make a great playmate for another dog.
Well, how about that super moon? It was a super blue blood moon on Monday, blue because it was the second full moon in the month. Cape Media News viewers sent us some amazing pictures of the moon. My dear friend JB from Marston's Mills captured these unbelievable shots at Gray's Beach in Yarmouth. And Sandy Neck Supervisor Donna Bragg captured this gorgeous shot over Cape Cod Bay at beautiful Sandy Neck Beach in Barnstable. And our friend photographer Peter Hernberg captured this shot in West Yarmouth. Absolutely amazing. And now for our sunrise report. Although it was a little snowy, the sun did rise this morning at 6:52 a.m. It'll set at 4:58. We gained 50 minutes of sun in the month of January. In February, the days will grow by an average of 2.5 minutes, and by month's end, we'll have gained another hour of daylight. Also of note, spring begins in 48 days, and I'm not believing what Punxsutawney Phil said that we're having 6 weeks of winter. I feel like it's going to be a little mild for us here on Cape Cod. Either way, 6 weeks until spring. And that brings another episode of Cape Media News to a close. Watch us every Friday at 5:30 on Cape Media Channel 99. Stay up to date with our local, authentic Cape Cod news stories online at capemedia.org. If you've got a news tip or a story idea, email news@capemedia.org. For Cape Media News, I'm Sarah Colvin.